Hello to everybody. Welcome to the Mobile Museum of Art for our day of art, music, and dance. And I see some wonderful familiar faces here. It's always good to see, and a lot of new faces. I wanted to thank you all for coming for this very special talk by Charles Smith, one of our great superstars here in Mobile, a national, internationally known ceramic artist, of which this wonderful piece right here is Charles, and is included as part of this Unsettled, the American Landscape exhibition, which I also want to thank Art Bridges Foundation and the Wadsworth. This is a collaboration between a variety of different museums, Columbia in South Carolina, Montgomery, the Wadsworth, and ourselves. So this exhibition is a grouping of a variety of different works addressing the American landscape, the changing of the American landscape, and how artists interpreted the American landscape.
So, I've been doing this for the last 52 years. So it's a lot of ills and do's and don'ts. I see some colleagues that I, especially Curtis Thomas, that I've worked with for a number of years, especially doing the art show movement, started in the 80s. But for my process, a lot of it is, you go to the academic side, and then you get out and find out a lot of that stuff don't work because you're in a totally different environment. And now you got to set your own environment up so you can have a workspace so you can get rid of the mill problem. Because once you come in and trying to come up with a body of work that's you versus copying somebody else, it's easy to copy, but it takes years for you to get your own little niche, and it's not easy. And coming from that Vietnam side and trying to find my space, and I didn't want to copy. It took years to get that down to a science. Although I listed myself as an artist, I really didn't have my game plan together for about 15 years after the fact. I mean, I was working, I was selling stuff, but I didn't have that signature. And that came in over gradually when people give you advice. And you got to take the advice from people that's in the know. You can't take advice from people that don't know what you're doing. You got to take that from collectors or people that's in the arts, and then they give you these little things that you need to know because they got skin in the game. They're not out there to hurt you. So they'll tell you, you have to do it too much. You're trying to be all things to everybody. You need to slow down, to relax because you have something to prove. And once you get that in your head and you sort of level it off, and the biggest thing that came to my attention when, going back to Curtis, we would do art shows and artists always would trade with each other. And when I would trade, I always had water in my work. And I didn't know it. So that's why we get into this environmental thing. This is not something that when you just take pencil to paper and saying that this is what I want. That's that old film adage where everybody sketch stuff and this is the idea. That wasn't it. Is that you take the advice of somebody, and my wife told me, she said, why would you always bring things on with water in them? I didn't know. Didn't even think about it. And so you started getting these little design alphabets together. So now I got a water thing going. And another client mentioned a case where I thought I was doing grass. I was designing this grass. I don't see it on here, but this is how the fish came about. I had a plume of pepper grass in the back of my studio. And I was drawing it the way the grass curled up, and I was using that as a design motif. But what it ended up being was a whale tail. Now we get into that yin and yang. And then when I look, the reason I took the lady advice because she bought the piece. So I had to go on. Oh, that's not grass, that's a whale tail. I said, okay, it's a whale tail. But when you go back and start dissecting it, the yin and yang thing, I'm thinking, going back to the water, and now we start getting this theme. And then within that theme, you start getting into that ancestral, you start getting into the history. Why? This didn't start off as a drum. This was just a work in progress. This is what you call a raku process. And what this is getting that clay up to 1600 degrees, put it in the wood shaving, and extracting the carbon from the wood, and it turns the clay black. This pot was done in 99. Now that's when I didn't have this, and I have a lot of this. You know, I was macho. If I tried it now, it's not going to work. So I wanted to do a piece that had some size to it, but I had to do it in sections. So this was sort of like a work in progress for me. And a lot of these things that you see on here is there for a reason. When you look at these holes, it's there for a design purpose, and it's also there for a work purpose. But you got to balance it out. If I just had 1 or 2 holes in it, they wouldn't balance out. So I got to do it on the design element. So what these holes are there for is to take this thing out of the keel. Because you can't reach in there. This thing is 1800 degrees. And if I stick my head in there, I'm not coming out. So you just got to figure a way how to make your own tools. So when you open this keel up at 1800 degrees, you got to get this thing out. And you only got about 30 seconds to get it out. And all this stuff is calculated because you can't wait. And you can't pray up on it. You got to have everything situated for the next step. You get this out. So what I did is made something that I can hook inside those holes. And this has to be thought out while you're working it way in advance. Because you can't drill that. And this way I can get that tool inside those holes and lift it up. Because it's got to come up even. And then put it into that wood shavings or sawdust. So you got about 2 minutes to do your song and dance. And you got to do it where there's no wind is going. That's going back into the environment too. So when you do these things, especially with pottery, you got to watch out for the weather. You got, you can't do it on a windy day. You can't do it when it rains. I used to, when I was young and dumb and didn't give a about lightning. But when I got older and was working out there and the lightning started coming, you figure like, I need to do better because this ain't gonna work. So I built a shed over it, so this way you can be able to maneuver that clay box. And I did this process for about maybe 20 years, and then got out of it after my kids got older, and it wasn't anybody that monitor me in the back. Because if I fool around and catch a fire, somebody put me out. So that's how that works, because you're dealing with all this flame and smoke. But that's how this going. And when you look at this particular piece, this is actually in reverse. Now I can draw like this. This is my drawing hand, the one at the top. I can't draw like that, so you just do it in reverse. Flip it. You see what I'm talking about? So when you go upright, you got something totally against the grain. And this is done with a chest key. If you're familiar with a chest key, those old bottle openers, the old beer drinkers, y'all know how that's what that's done. But that was in my prime when I can actually pull that off. If I do it now, I'm not going to be able to put it off because I got these things, and I can't see that it's not as tight as it used to be. So some things you just don't do. You know, you just do a body work and then you move on. In some cases, if you're looking at the pots where the design might be bigger and they say, well, he's changed. Well, the style is still there, but the only reason I'm doing it bigger is because I got to see it. I can't. You see what I'm talking about? The older you get, the bigger things got to go. And that's how that worked out. And that's how this was pulled off. But the name came from Paul Richardson. Paul was one of the assistant curators for years. And he saw the piece, and he named it the Pedestal Drum. And like anything else, he said he wanted to purchase it. I said, well, that's a Pedestal Drum. That's how that, you get those stirs. But then it comes back to what was the whole purpose down through these years, like 50 years in the making, they actually come into a story that I didn't even know about 2 years after the fact. So what you do is do a body of work, and you do a body of work well, and then the story is going to come. A lot of people thinking that the story is always the beginning. The title is always in the beginning. It's not. It's to go in and make sure you got the skill level. Because doing this stuff is expensive. Is that once you get that skill level down, you know how to work by praying on it. Because you can't go in and put this stuff in and start praying that it's going to work. You got to know it's got to work. You got to be able to visualize what's going on in that keel. You got to see. You got to know what position to put this stuff in. There's a lot of stuff going on inside a working artist. And see, with me, I don't like to be around a lot of people. Because you know I'm shy. And being all that, we don't like too much movement. So it's that thing about being independent, and you got to be zero in on. And once you get that formula, is that I got to keep doing this the same way every time. So you get a system going that I can't break away from this system. That if I start, I got to have an end. And in that end, you got to process. You got to know what to do next. And that next will always come to that next point. And that's where you can do a complete body of work versus coming out, doing stuff, and then start making excuses for it. Well, why does got a crack in it? I don't know. That's not good. And my thinking was, if I do 100 pots, 99 of those pots got to come back perfect, and the one that messed up should be human error. I should know my material. I'm not going against the grain. And this way, that's how you can always stay in that creative edge. Because you get over there, and if I make a mistake, and I learned from this years ago, if you're working on a piece, if you're going to make a mistake, it's always going to be at the end. That last little movement, you might have some impurities in the clay, and you're trying to dig it out, and what's going to happen is you're going to punch a hole in it. But me being smart, you always do things in threes. So if you get a hole, you just do it 3 times, and that's technique. And if you keep repeating that, that becomes a part of your repertoire and your game plan. I did a piece one time, it was years ago. It was a priest came to the studio, and he wanted me to do a baptismal set, pat. And I was working on the wafer box, but I always had an S crack at the top. And I did it again and still had an S crack in it. And I decided, I said, no, I'm getting tired of this, because I'm losing money on this. So what I did, I cut a hole in it, alleviated that stress. So when he came in and he saw it, he said, oh, that's nice. I said, I did that just for you. But I used it for a couple of years because that's a signature, because that's a learning process. Because things, it gives you little ideas on this way you need to move on. Because I'm the one that always take that last part and dissect it to see what I can come up with, that's new. So that's my process. And that's why you always got to have a situation where you can repeat and you repeat. You don't even if I got Alzheimer's, I think I can remember that because I stay in threes. I do things in threes. I throw pots in threes, and this way you have 3 complete pots versus doing with other people that want to do 2 or 3 dozen, and I'm not that. And my stuff is going into the ceremony. I'm one that, my thinking is to keep me aligned with nature and with that society, is that I am the artist of the church and state. I'm a part of the king court. So I'm there to document. And when you document that for the church and state, everything will have to be perfect, and it's got to have reason behind it. So I'm always in ceremony, and I'm always got to ask for permission when I throw pots. Same way with Native Americans. You just don't grab, play, and abuse it. So you got to go in there and you actually ask for permission. And when I'm throwing, this is the central throwing to me. It's that center right there. Question?
I just have a comment. I met you the first time probably 30 years ago or so when there was Upham Gallery on Old Shell Road. And somehow you walked out with me, and so I was very impressed that, you were out with me. And so anyhow, you said to me, I want you need to buy your grandchildren all of my ceramics. And if they hang on to them for about 60 years, they will be very wealthy.
That sounds like me. but I'm like anything, the price have shot up somewhat, which it should be because of the price of materials is going up, and during these times we live in, you can't get nothing for $35 anymore.
No.
So that's just the market. And you gotta understand that as well if you wanna be not being a starving artist. You know, it's no fun being a starving artist. People try to pretend like that's going to be something to be proud of. You know, Alabama Power don't put up with that. You gotta find your niche, and you're not gonna cater to everybody. You gotta find that tribe that actually know what you're talking about and put skin in the game. Keep it going. I got people that got 200-300 pounds in their collection. Just my stuff. You know, so that in itself is good because what that do, that's documentation. And they know more about the conversation, how they acquire each piece. And if you got collectors that got more pots than me, and they're documenting those, that says a lot for that longevity to that next generation. Because they're not gonna give them away. And these things are already bequeathed to other institutions or to other family members that know what to do with it.
Do you arrive at your colors before you fire up the clay, or does it come out?
No, you want your own pattern. That's going back to being a sure thing. You don't second guess that. I don't do any funky colors. You know, you're looking at me. You know, I'm not gonna do pink. I'm not gonna do that gaudy green. I kind of stay in the bold colors. I know what this gonna look like. I don't want to do any greens and blues that's gonna take away from that black. So when I do the other pots, most of them are just neutral whites or green. But for a lot of flash, because I'm design oriented, all my pots gotta have a strip on them. I tried that years ago and I thought I was slick because I needed some fast money. I thought I'd just throw the pot and glaze. Went to a show. People said, no. That ain't gonna work. And I didn't sell any. Because they so used to the design and it's just standard. And that design is the signature. And that's what they're familiar with. And then they don't have to stick with that. Because that's what, that was the signal right there. You can't do what everybody else do. And I thought that, well, if these other people can just do glaze on glaze, then I can do glaze on glaze. No, you can't, because you already told us you could do better than that. So you got your own signature, and you got to stick with it.
How long did your masterpiece be done?
You mean for the time frame for each piece?
Yeah.
It varies. I normally don't, well, I find with the way I work, I don't throw in the pots during the weather. I'm going in hibernation. My clay body don't like stress. And I don't like forcing. So I normally do pots in the spring and the fall. I don't do anything in the summer because of the southern heat. And I'm too tender. And my clay body don't like artificial air. It don't like fans. And the way I work, and when you look at those pots, when you see that black slip, you gotta have a natural airflow. If you put false air to it, it dries out. That black stain should work as a skin on that pot. So they gotta actually be worn. And everything you do in ceramics gotta be worn. Although this is 1, 2, 3, 4, each one of those little faces is a face in itself, you always gotta, when they dry, everything gotta dry as one. Been in the ball game too long to rush it. And it's just patient. And that comes with that learning period. You're not in a rush, just take your time, because the next day gonna come. And when you do take them out, you got something that you can cherish for the rest of your life. And that's how that works.
Well, I'm gonna let him take a break now, and I wanna thank Charles very much for coming out on a Saturday and telling us all about his career and his life, and I'm glad he hasn't gone off into the sunset or retired. Keep on working, keep going. And as I said, as he has brought up, we're very fortunate that the previous curator, Paul, loved Charles and loved his work and got this amazing piece. And as I said to some of, when we started this, that there are some other pieces of Charles in our collection that are on the ground floor that you're welcome to go take a look at.